shall we? And a follow-up of yesterday's convictions and the police chief in Newcastle once again defending paying a child rapist to spy on those involved in this sexual exploitation gang.
So I think this is a really important element of this story about the child sex abuse gang in Newcastle. And it turns out that Northumbria police, as the story says, paid a convicted paedophile almost £10,000 to help get evidence on other men acting in the area. And the NSPCC came out very quickly against this and said it was absolutely appalling. I've got some sympathy with the view that if you were a victim and this man had raped you, and you knew that he was getting paid money to supply the police with evidence, that's incredibly problematic. But I do think that the ends may well justify the means, and this has to be an operational decision for the police. And the police do say that this guy was not, this convicted rapist and paedophile was not put amongst vulnerable women and girls, and that actually the evidence was very important in bringing the conviction. So I think the problem with this is it has to be an operational decision for the police. I understand why victims might be quite upset about it, but that's why it's not a decision that victims get to make. But the problem is that in the wake of all of this stuff coming out about child sex abuse gangs across big swathes of the country, actually, it's really undermined trust in police, because the police have really, in areas like Rochdale, Rotherham, failed to act, failed to take what these girls were saying, white working class girls, very vulnerable, failed to take what they said seriously. And, you know, the police themselves had incredibly prejudiced attitudes towards these girls. So some of the inquiry reports have found, for example, that, you know, police officers were assuming that girls of 11 could consent to sex with men 3 times their age. It's just disgusting.
Yeah.
So it's difficult, because trust has been eroded in the police on these issues, but I do feel that this has to be an operational decision.
Yes, and there we see the Daily Telegraph trying to get away from what you're calling the PC pre-coverage of all of this, that Asian sex gangs are racist criminals and this needs to be seen as a racist act, which in many people's eyes it has not been.
Yeah, I think first and foremost it's a misogynist act. I mean, the attitudes that you have to have towards women, to treat children like this, it's absolutely disgusting. And this story is all about calling for higher sentences because these crimes may have been racially aggravated. And I just think...
But these are mainly white girls. That's the...
Yes.
That's the difficulty here. That stops it being entirely misogyny, doesn't it?
Well, no, but I think it is misogyny. I think there may be cultural factors behind it, and I think, you know, we need to have an open conversation about that, but also we need to be very careful not to say there is a direct causal link between being a Muslim man and then committing some of these horrific crimes. So it's a very, very sensitive area. But I think, you know, child sex is one of the most disgusting crimes out there, child sex abuse rather. The idea that you need to, that you know, it's worse if it's racially aggravated, I just don't quite buy that. I think everybody convicted of these heinous crimes should be treated the same.
2 quick stories if we can. This one, alarm as holiday Britons are told they face attacks from violent protesters in Spain.
This is a really weird story, but it's made quite a lot of the papers, and there's a backlash against tourists. And Sonia, you were saying that this is actually happening in not just in Spain, but in a number of other parts of the world. I mean, partly we're ourselves to blame because our behaviour isn't always, as a nation, brilliant when we go abroad, particularly you know, stag do's and hen do's and stuff like that. And it appears that particularly in Spain, people are getting fed up in certain areas, and there's quite hostile graffiti. And there's an irony here, of course, which is the extent to which those areas actually depend on the revenue that they get from British tourism. Now, I'm not for a moment saying that that means that they should tolerate the appalling behaviour that they're sometimes subjected to, but there's obviously a real tension there between those who are benefiting from the tourist euro, from Britons going over there, and those who are just feeling the sharp end of bad behaviour and the impact on whatever public services and public order.
Yeah, the sharp end of the falling pound as well. I thought you were going to mention there. We will return to the attempted burglary, which we didn't get to at 11:30, but we'll see you then. Thank you very much indeed, Sonia and Isabel. See you later. Let's check out the weather.